Alrighty, welcome back to BeekTalk. Today we're talking about how honeybees reproduce. So my ticker for the show is, have you ever seen a honeybee swarm? Have you ever experienced a honeybee swarm? For beekeepers who are in the know, you know that a swarm is technically how a hive reproduces, but we're going to talk a lot about that today. So I want to thank you for tuning into BeekTalk. This is the weekly live stream show that discusses the methods and approaches one might take when keeping bees. I'm the host of the show, and my name is Eric. I didn't have a show last week because there was too much snow, and today we had an ice storm, and I know that most of the country is in super cold weather or ice storms or blackouts or all kinds of stuff. But we're here today, and we're doing the show, and I'm excited to have you. If you're watching, please drop me a comment and tell me where you're from, if you ever experienced a honeybee swarm, or if you're a beekeeper or just wanting to learn. As always, my goal for the show is to have interaction. So I want to help you understand the world of honeybees. It's a complex world. Just like our human interactions, honeybees are a whole nother thing. So as I discuss today's topic, please feel free to comment with your own experiences, some questions. As I go over, I'm going to pick my favorite commenter to win a really cool BeekTalk live stream sticker, the sticker for the show. So please contribute to the conversation. I love this to be interactive. I love the feeling of helping people learn about bees. If you're a fan of the show and want to support us, you can purchase any of these cool stickers at or the Might Fight t-shirt at mightfight.buzz, or if you want to read some blog posts or see some suggested products or a suggested read that I'm going to mention again later in the show, you can see all those suggested products and affiliate links at blossombuzzbees.buzz, and the link to that website is in the comments of the show. Today, we're talking about how honeybees reproduce, a little bit about the birds and bees, if you will. Many people know that honeybees are important to our survival and our ecosystems, but not many people know how important, or I should say, how honeybees reproduce. They think that one bee is a bee and it'll probably lay more babies. Not many people know. So that is the topic for today, and I'm going to do, I should mention this is a really incredibly broad and complex topic that has had many professionals studying it for their whole careers. Today, in a half-hour live stream, I'm going to try and give you the tunnel vision, bare bones basics of honeybee reproduction. So I can't really talk about this topic without first explaining how a honeybee colony works. Many people want to save the bees, and they're thinking about saving one individual bee or, singular bees, and that is great. I appreciate every desire to help the bees. However, as beekeepers, we take saving the bees as a much broader topic, and we're actually talking about honeybee colonies. If you ask a beekeeper how many bees they have, they're not going to tell you an estimated, so many thousands bees. They're going to tell you how many colonies they operate. That's what we're really focused on, because one single honeybee doesn't really matter. It's kind of crude to say it like that, but one single honeybee doesn't really matter. It is not going to live a successful life on its own. It needs a colony. It's not going to be brought into the world without a colony, and it's not going to have a purpose in the world without a colony. So that brings me to the question, what is a colony? Beekeepers talk about colonies, hives, things like that, swarms, things like that. What does that mean? And to give you another definition on top of two more definitions, a honeybee colony consists of 3 individuals, times many, many, many. But you need a queen bee. You've heard about this. The queen bee is a female. She lays fertile eggs, and that's her job. She does that all day long during the summer, and she survives for a couple of years. But her job, she is mama. She lays all the eggs. Then you have drones. These are the males. They don't do a great job of very much except for spreading genetic information. And then you have the worker bees. They are all females, and they do all the work. If you've ever seen a bee pollinating a flower, it is a female and it is a worker bee. You're not going to see it any other way. That's, of course, if we're talking about honeybees. Like I said, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments so I can see, because I am explaining, like I said, a really broad topic, and I'm trying to do it really quick and concise. So let me know if I left out anything. So we know that we're counting colonies, not individual bees. We know that a colony needs a queen who can lay eggs. It needs fellas, and it needs ladies to do the work. Now that we know that, we're going to talk about how honeybees reproduce. And commonly, this is called a swarm. If we're observing this in nature, it's going to be a swarm of bees. If it's initiated by a beekeeper, we call that a split. So that is a little bit of a terminology difference. Oftentimes, those terms are used interchangeably. But think back to biology class and think about cell division, right? You have a cell. We're all made of cells. Bees are made of cells. Plants are made of cells. These right here are honeybee cells. Everything in life is cells. But we have a cell. It gets bigger, right? It gets full of the bits and pieces it needs. When it gets too big, it splits down the middle and cuts into 2. And then those 2 grow bigger and bigger and bigger and then split into 4. And that's basically how it works. A healthy beehive will do one of those splits every year. So it'll start in the spring as 1, it'll go into winter as 2 or maybe 4 if they are successful and there's enough resources for them to split again or swarm again. So we talked about biology class with that split. How this works, you have one colony that's really successful. They survive winter. They lay a lot of eggs. They fill up the cavity that they're in wall to wall with as much food and eggs as they can possibly fit. They are cramming bees in there. They are running out of space, really. They don't have any room to grow. There's a lot of processes that happen to initiate the swarm, but the number one factor is that there's not enough room. There's no, economic mobility for the bees per se, so they need to leave. And how this works, how this division works in nature, is the queen in the original colony leaves with about half, somewhere a third to 2/3 of the bees. Figure about half the bees that were in the original colony, they leave with that queen. They filled their stomachs with food and they just plop out into the environment somewhere outside of this hive. They land on a tree, a playset, a car, the grass, a bush. They land somewhere. And that is the split. That's the swarm that happens. Left behind is a lot of food, a lot of eggs that are going to be hatching over the next 3 weeks. And, of course, there's a lot of bees still. There's half the hive's worth of bees. But they're missing a queen. They don't have a queen. The old queen left. So it's not a colony. They're missing their main ingredient. Luckily, the previous queen had some foresight, and she laid eggs that will be developed into queens. She does this just before she leaves. So hopefully in a couple days, those eggs will hatch, making virgin queens who can then go mate in the environment and come back. And hopefully within a month, they have a functioning hive with a mated queen, worker bees, brood, food, all the stuff. That's this colony that had produced the split. Then we have over here, we have the split that has a mated queen who's ready to go, lots of bees, some drones, but they don't have a place. They don't have a home yet. So what happens is they bounce around. They find, like I said, they throw themselves into the environment. They're exposed. They're hanging off of a tree. They're very vulnerable. They don't have a home yet. They have the ingredients, but they don't have a home. So they bounce around. They find different locations until they find the spot that feels right. This move could be 6, 7, 11 times that they move until they find a cavity that they like. This cavity is going to have an entrance hole that's near the bottom of the cavity. The entrance hole's probably going to be a circle. That's most common in the environment, but it has a circle, the diameter of about 3 inches. That's what they look for. In some shape or another, it might be long as a crack, but that's what they like. They like a 3-inch hole. Then they also need a volume in that cavity. Chances are it's a hollowed out log or a stump or the studs in your wall or the joists in your floor. The bees love wood, so that's the kind of environment they're looking for. And they also are looking for a volume about equal to a 10-frame deep Langstroth super. So you see a lot of beekeepers who operate as a single deep. This is what they do because they know this. They know that honeybees ideally are looking for a cavity that's about the size of a deep. There's enough combs in there for the queen to lay, and there's enough space for the bees to put food. So you can successfully beekeep in a single deep. It does need observation and attention, but that's one method that people do. I do want to plug a book really quick. It's called Honeybee Democracy. It is by Thomas Seeley. I have a link to this book in my on my suggested reads page on my website. I have a link in the description. If you follow the link and purchase the book, I get a kickback, which is how I fund the show. But this book, Honeybee Democracy, talks in real details about the decision-making process and the other detailed processes that I'm leaving out of this discussion. So definitely read this book if it's something that's interesting to you. It also talks about a little bit about how like humans make decisions as well. So it's a pretty cool book. But that was a little bit of a sidetrack. Let me try and get back onto track here. So we have once the old queen who left the hive with the bees, once they find their new location, they will start making this comb. The graphic you see behind me is the honeybee infrastructure. That's where they put food. That's where they lay eggs. That is everything. So they'll start drawing out comb. They'll fill up the nooks and crannies of the colony with propolis, which is basically part of the immune system of the hive. It's bee glue. But that's what they do. And once they find that and start laying comb, that is their new colony. You have the old colony who's making a queen, the new colony who is working on comb in their new cavity, and you have 2 beehives. That's how they reproduce. They split just like that. So like I said, this is the real basics, really basics of how these bees do it. There's so many details that I left out They actually starve the queen for a period of time to make her lose weight so she's able to fly. They have a way of voting on what locations they like. They decide who goes out and scouts for new locations. There's a lot of decisions to be made about a natural swarm. But the goal of beekeepers is to keep our bees. It tends to give beekeepers a bad reputation when other beekeepers allow their colonies to swarm into the environment. Not only, the big overarching issue is Western honeybees are not native to our American ecosystems. So we shouldn't really be just pumping the environment full of these beehive colonies that are going to be unmanaged in trees, with vectors for diseases, vectors for mites, things like that. It's a bad thing to do for the environment. It's also bad because as beekeepers, there's a lot of people are afraid of bees. That's unavoidable, really. The issue is we ask our neighbors, we say, hey, is it cool if I keep some bees? I promise they're not going to bother you. And then after a few years, you become a better beekeeper. Your hives survive winter, and then they swarm without us knowing. And what this involves is 20, 30,000 bees, chaotic, loud. They make a black cloud, and they can land anywhere. They could land on your neighbor's car, on their deck, their children's play set, by their pool, any number of places that we don't want them to land. I don't know if you have cool neighbors or not, but most neighbors are not happy to have a swarm of bees land on their house. It sounds like a biblical plague kind of thing. Oh, hi, Joy. Yeah, so the goal of the beekeeper is to prevent our bees from swarming for all the reasons I've already listed, but also for the reason of they are our bees. I don't know about you, but I don't want to purchase bees every year. So if I can produce my own bees in my own apiary and keep them that way, those are free bees, basically. So the goal of the beekeeper is to preventatively split your colonies so they don't have the inclination to swarm. Swarming, like I said, is the biological function of bees to reproduce. And just like humans, we always have that desire to reproduce. So whenever the time is right, that's on our mind. Same thing with the bees. Whenever the resources and the things are in the right place, they want to reproduce. Beekeepers, having researched and having prior knowledge, knowing that they want to swarm, what we will do is perform a split. This is a swarm that a beekeeper initiates. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different methods for splitting bees. They have time parameters, they have volume parameters, they have resource parameters. There's tons of different ways of doing it. But again, the point of this show is for me to give you the basics, very basics. So the basic way that a beekeeper can perform a split is when you have a colony survive winter and it's coming up into its next spring, before the early nectar crop starts showing. For me in the Pocono Mountains, that's dandelions. That's common for a lot of places in the US. Dandelions or red maples, sugar maples, things like that. There's a couple of indicator species. Figure out what the indicator species is for your climate and go by that. You want to split your colonies before that indicator species starts to bloom. Like I said, once resources are available, they want to reproduce. So you take your colony. If it has 5 frames, you divide it into 3 weak frames and 2 strong frames. If it has 2 boxes, you divide it 1 box to 1 box. And basically, you take your big colony manually divide it into two, give it roofs, give it bottoms, give them a little bit of sugar water or some pollen, just to not shock them, but to, set them off on the right foot. Once they're in two separate boxes, there's going to be a queen in one of them and not a queen in another. Hopefully, the hive that doesn't have a queen will start the process of making one. And in 30 days, you have about a 70% chance of having a working colony. And that's not too bad. And then the side that has the queen, it should be going right from the jump. Again, that is the very incredibly crude, basic way of doing a split. I'm probably going to come up with a whole hour-long course that I'll offer on my website that talks about different methods for splitting. But if you are not making a plan to split your second-year hives, they are going to do it without you. So definitely consider that. If you are a new beekeeper, I would focus on learning about the caste system and more biological functions of bees. If you're a second or third year beekeeper and you have a hive who is coming out of winter, definitely make a plan. Learn how to split, learn what makes sense for you. There's many different methods like I explained. If you understand the biology behind a method of splitting, do it. This is where the road meets the rubber in beekeeping. You have to experiment, you have to try things. And splitting is definitely one of those things where there's lots of opportunities for it to go wrong, and for the bees to teach you a lesson in a way. So just be receptive to what the bees are telling you. Take notes is always my advice. So yes, that is the basics of splitting and swarming and how honeybees reproduce. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. Jim says learning and doing are two different things. Exactly. I love teaching these live streams because it allows me to plant the seeds in your mind for what things should look like, what you can expect. And that way, when you are a second or third year beekeeper and you forget about swarming and you say, wow, I went in April and the hive was doing great, and I came back in May and they didn't have a queen, and it looks like they don't have any eggs. I wonder why. You'll remember me saying it was a split. It was a swarm. So yes, the biology, right? If you have a queen who is born in 2020, last year, and she survives all year long, laying eggs, doing a great job, and she survives winter, and she does a great job with that, and she's in the late winter, she's laying eggs and building up a strong colony. In the springtime, when there's a lot of resources available and the hive quickly fills up with food, the queen says, listen, I am successful. I made it through winter. I'm a teenager now. I'm going to go reproduce. She's going to do that split whether you are planning for it or not. So that's why I implore everyone to plan your splits in advance. Here in the Poconos, mid-February, I have another month and a half until swarm season. If you're in a local beekeeping group, you might identify swarm season by people saying, I lost my bees. If you're around this zip code, let me know if you find a swarm. This is what the queen looks like. Or you might get frantic calls to your beekeeping group saying, there are bees on my car, please come get them. That is the heart of swarm season. So you want to plan for that. You want to prep for that. Right now, a whole month ahead of time, I am planning what hives are strong, what hives are weak, what ones I'm going to split right off the bat, what hives might need to be split twice before I am coming up into the season. I'm making sure I have all the equipment I need. If I have 5 hives that made it through, I'm expecting to make 5 splits. That's 10 colonies. If I only have 6 hives worth of hardware, I know I have to get rid of 4 hives or I have to buy more hardware. So definitely plan ahead as far as it goes with splitting and swarming. You know, just like any animals you can own, reproducing is part of biology. So you get dogs, you get them spayed and neutered, because otherwise they're gonna reproduce, and you have no control over it. So same thing with bees. Bees are animals, and as our stewards, we have to learn how to keep track of that. Like I said, if you have any questions about a topic or anything about beekeeping, you can drop them in the comments. I will come through and respond to them after the show. I love doing this show. If you also like the show and want to support us, you can purchase the recommended reads that I have on my website, blossombuzzbees.buzz. I have links in the comments of the show. Please share the show with any beekeeping friends that you have. You can also purchase my Might Fight t-shirts or any of these cool stickers on the website. Like I said, the link is in the comments. So yes, I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of BeekTalk. If you have any recommendations for future shows, let me know about that. And I hope you all are getting ready for the upcoming beekeeping season. And I want to thank you for watching again. Take care.